make sure that you read it on your own time. And then once that's done, just follow all the other instructions, judge a practice debate, and then also answer the questionnaire, which will really test your knowledge, inshallah. And if we have time at the end of this, I think we're actually going to go through the questionnaire and just like go through every question so that it's clear. So I am going to start by sharing the PowerPoint. Okay. So just a brief intro into just like basically the format of debate in general. Very basically, this is parliamentary style debate. And the way that works is there's one team, they're called the proposition, and there's another team, they're called the opposition. And it's the and there's a topic that the entire debate revolves around. It could be anything like the United States is the greatest country in the world, or cats are better than dogs, or like nuclear weapons should be outlawed. And whatever that topic is the proposition's job to advocate for and affirm the topic. They're trying to prove that this topic is correct as they have defined it. And it's the opposition's job to basically oppose that topic in every way possible. They're trying to say the exact opposite of that topic, and they're trying to negate, shut down all the proposition's points, and they're trying to reaffirm their own points against the topic. And that's what the entire debate is about. Basically, there's three speakers on both sides. Um, uh, and then they just basically alternate and in favor of and against the topic. And it's your job as a judge, basically, to be very neutral, be very impartial, and to assess which side did a better job advocating for their own points and shutting down the other team's points. Yes, brother Sayyid Ahmed.
So the topic is given in advance, or they will get the topic at the debate?
So there are two different kinds of topics. There are given topics which are given in advance. We released these topics, I think, 2 weeks ago, and these are topics that the debaters have been practicing for the last 2 weeks. They've done a lot of research. They have a lot of data to back their stuff up. They've probably even done practice speeches. We have two topics like that in the preliminaries, and then we have one impromptu topic. And impromptu topics are topics that the kids will get 10 minutes before the round starts, and that's really, to test how good they are at thinking on their feet, how good they are at improvising. It's really testing their critical thinking and in the moment abilities to debate, as opposed to the amount of research that they've done before
Okay.
then. Um, the semifinals and the finals will also both be impromptu, and you, as the judge, will know that topic the exact same time as the kids, which is 10 minutes before. Um, so yeah, that's your job basically as a judge, and a really good way to define this too, and well, a good metaphor uh, for this whole process of like judging the debate and who's winning and who's losing is it's like this. The proposition, there's like a vase. The proposition's job is to fill that vase up with water. They're trying to fill this vase all the way to the top, completely get it full. And it's the opposition's job to try and empty that vase. Every single time the proposition makes like a good point, they are pouring more water into that vase. And every single time the opposition is making a good point, they're like poking a hole in that vase. And some points are stronger than others. So maybe sometimes the proposition's pouring a lot more water into that vase. Sometimes the opposition, they're making a bigger hole here and they're making like a smaller hole here because one point is stronger, another point is weaker. If the proposition is like super on fire, they're clearly the winners, that vase is going to be like overflowing with water. It will be very, very obvious. But if the opposition's the winner and it's very, very clear, very, very obvious, it's like they knocked over the entire vase. The entire vase is shattered. There's like no water inside that at all. Those are examples of very one-sided debates. You probably won't encounter a situation like that. Well, I shouldn't say that. Some of you will encounter situations like that when one team is clearly better than the other. But most of the time, it's a lot tighter. It's a lot closer. The vase might be like 75% full, or it might be like 40% full. It might like be 49% full. Basically, if it's over 50% full, then you're like, okay, I give it to the proposition. If it's less than 50% full, then you give it to the opposition. Yeah, that's that. I think that's a pretty good metaphor for looking at it. And
Just
if
to add
you're,
on to that quickly,
yeah,
I was going to say that a good way of thinking about it is the proposition has the burden of making a point or making an argument, where the opposition doesn't. So the proposition, because they define the topic, they're coming up with a point, a stance, something that they're arguing for, and the opposition doesn't necessarily have a stance. All they're trying to do is to disprove or poke holes in what the proposition's saying. So if neither team says anything, then the opposition wins by default because there's no argument. So everything is based on the validity of the proposition's argument, and the opposition, what they're trying to do is poke holes, and the proposition, they're trying to support it.
Yep. Brother, and sorry, what does the K stand for? Is that Kamran?
I'm sorry, Brother Khabib.
Okay.
No, I think it was Brother Usman. I think he. I was just gonna ask with the vase metaphor, and I guess the objective here. You have a proposition and an opposition, and just to, I guess, kind of confirm my understanding, the proposition is attempting to advance a position, whereas the opposition is then trying to draw back that position or trying to halt it or reverse it, if you will.
Sure.
So the opposition is not necessarily bringing a position. The opposition, by definition, is just opposing the proposition, and the proposition is the team that is advancing or trying to construct
Mhm.
right, an
Yeah,
argument. Okay.
that is for the most part true, but I would also say that that's like the baseline job of the opposition. So I'm gonna give like you an example of well, let's go with an example for a topic. Let's say the topic is like cats are better than dogs. So the proposition is very clearly trying to say cats are like better than dogs. They are superior in this way and however they define it. Is the opposition doesn't necessarily need to say that dogs are better than cats. They just need to say no. They could say like, oh no, actually they're equal. Just the cats are not better than dogs. If the opposition wants to, they could go the extra mile and say, actually, dogs are better than cats because that's another way for them to basically try and disprove the proposition. Um, Theoretically, it's like Osman was saying, it's also possible that the opposition just has no points of their own and they just destroy every single one of the proposition's points. That is very possible. It's a very risky strategy though, because you need to make sure then that you hit every single point pretty much. And that's why any good opposition debate team will advocate for, will have their own points against the topic. Um, yeah, you probably won't see a situation where it's like the opposition only disproves the proposition's points, but it could possibly happen. Yeah.
No,
So
thank
now
you.
I'm going to go over the basic way that the debate works. This is the format of the debate. The first speaker is the first speaker proposition, and they speak for 5 minutes. Then it goes to the first speaker opposition. They speak for 5 minutes. Then it goes to the second speaker proposition. They speak for 5 minutes. Then it goes to the second speaker opposition. They speak for 5 minutes. And then it goes to the third speaker opposition. So this one's a bit tricky. It doesn't go to the third speaker proposition. It goes to the third speaker opposition. And then it concludes with the third speaker proposition. The reason we do this is because, like Usman said, the burden of proof is on the proposition. And because of that, they actually have a harder job, technically speaking. That's why we let them open the debate and why we let them conclude the debate as well. It's also worth noting that the third speakers for the proposition and the opposition, they're both only allowed to speak for 4 minutes instead of 5 minutes because their job is not to bring up any new points. It's really just to summarize the entire debate, say all of the points that their own team said, reiterate why they're the better, stronger points, and to knock down as many of the other team's points as possible. So they're not bringing any new material to the information. They're just like kind of summarizing everything, trying to make it very, very clear to the judges why their own team has the stronger argument overall. Yes, brother Sayyid Ahmed.
So I have a quick question on the point of information.
Sure.
Like, and it should be 15, I think 10 to 15 seconds.
Would it
And
be?
it's
Oh,
so
sorry.
I just need clarification that, okay, for example, I'm a proposition, this is a position, so I want to give. So it's up to the opposition to accept it or not. That's because I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
watching the sample debate. So
Yeah, it's 100% up to it's basically whoever is on the stand at that moment,
yeah,
they're allowed to either take the point of information or they have to say, "No, I don't want to take it right now.
okay,
Please sit down." And I'll
okay,
talk more about points of information
oh,
further on and like there might be more valuable information when I get to that point.
okay, thanks.
No problem. So the and so going back to this debate just structure sort of thing, it's the first speaker's job for the first speaker proposition. It's their job to first define the topic. And this is critical because this is like, what everyone's going to be debating for the rest of the debate. For example, going back to my example of like cats are better than dogs, um, you could define that in any number of ways. Maybe you want to say, you could define that as like cats are better as pets than dogs. Or you could define it as like cats are like the superior animals compared to dogs. Or you could also define it as something, maybe you could be metaphorical. You could say something like introverts are better than extroverts because like the cat symbolizes an introvert and the dog symbolizes an extrovert. You could even go really crazy and make it like about music or something. You could say like cool cats who like cats like jazz and like dogs are like rappers, so jazz is better than rap. Basically, it's the proposition's right to define the topic however they want. And that's their right as a proposition because the burden of proof is on them. So any good first speaker will make it very, very clear what the definition of the topic is, how literal they're being, any like ways to constrain the topic. And they do need to constrain the topic and limit it in a certain way so that it is debatable. And actually, I'm going to skip forward and talk about defining the topic right now so it's 100% clear. Yes, brother, what's your question?
No, I think um, you answered my question here because I was going to say in that example, cats are better than dogs, right? If the proposition came up and wanted to, they're responsible for defining the universe here essentially,
Yeah.
and they could come and just give a definition of better, right? And really restrict or limit that definition such that then the opposition is operating in a limited universe of discourse, if you will,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yeah. And they have to limit the scope of that topic in some way. Right here, it says here, narrow the scope of the debate where applicable, because then it can just get too broad and no one really knows what they're talking about. If they limit it too much, that might be an issue. And I'm going to go into some of the like undebatable topics. Sorry, not undebatable or like unfair definitions, because most of the teams are going to define the topics in a fair way. It might go to a situation where it's an unfair definition, and I'm going to talk to you about what you do in that situation. But these are examples of unfair definitions. One is a truism. It's an argument that is considered true by the vast majority of people. So, like, let's say we define that topic, cats are better than dogs, as cats are better at climbing trees than dogs. Like that's kind of a scientific fact. Cats are very clearly better at climbing trees. No one can really contest that scientifically. That would be an example of an unfair definition. We have tautologies, so it's not true now, but it will be true in the future. This example was made before Obama closed Guantanamo Bay, but like you see the point. Well, he didn't really close it, but you see the point here. It's Obama should close Guantanamo Bay. While that isn't true at the moment. He's already like decided to close Guantanamo Bay, so that's something that will be true in the future. Like the sun will rise from the east. We know that's going to happen tomorrow. So that's a tautology. We have squirrels, something that's completely unreasonable or like completely disconnected to the topic. So if someone defined the topic as cats are better than dogs as something like the United States should what's it called? Let me try and think of a crazy one. Um, let's say like the United States should invest more resources into nuclear energy. If the topic is cats are better than dogs, and suddenly you're talking about why the United States should invest more resources into nuclear energy, like that's completely unrelated to the topic. That's like squirrels because it's just like clearly there's no link between these two things. That would be also an unreasonable and unfair definition. And the last one is one that is like too specific to a time or place. And this one here it says like let's say we're talking about the topic like we should say like the topic is we should outlaw nuclear energy. If someone defined that as like the Michigan nuclear power plant in Dearborn should be shut down. That is like so specific of a topic because most people are not aware of a nuclear power plant in Dearborn, Michigan. They're not aware of the circumstances or the context or anything. That's an unfair definition because it's just too specific. You can't expect the other team to have enough information to properly respond to any of the points that you're making. So obviously the topics should be narrow, but they should also be general enough that both teams kind of know what you're talking about. Um, And again, it's the proposition's job to define the topic. If they define, even if the topic leans in their favor in the definition, it seems like it might be a little bit unfair, but it's still like debatable, then that would still probably slide. And most proposition teams will try and define the topic in a way that slightly favors them. It's just when it's so clearly unfair or disconnected, that's when it becomes an issue. And when the topic becomes undebatable or it's completely disconnected, that's when it becomes a definitional debate. At that point, it is the opposition's job to basically contest the definition, and they're trying to say like, no, this definition is undebatable. Um, so in the okay, so let me go back to like the cats are better than dogs example. If they define it as cats are more agile than dogs, then the opposition will have to say like, no, there's scientific proof that cats are more agile than dogs. They can like climb trees. They're better. They can jump higher. They can jump further. Their muscles are like better attuned and they have better balance. And you're like, this is all very much a scientific fact, and everyone knows this. Now it's the opposition's job to basically say it's the topic is they define the topic unfairly for this reason, this reason, this reason, this reason. And now the proposition has to come back and they have to say, oh, actually, our topic is totally fair for this reason, this reason, this reason, this reason. And if the proposition can't adequately prove that their definition is debatable, then the opposition wins. And if the proposition can prove that their definition is debatable, then they win. So maybe the proposition can come back and say like, oh no, actually there's like several species of dogs that are even more agile than cats. Some of them are known to climb trees. Some of them are known to like jump much further. They've actually done scientific studies and they've shown that dogs are actually have a higher, greater agility as compared to cats. I'm making this stuff up, obviously, but if like somehow that was the case and the proposition proved that to be the case, they would basically win the debate. Definitional debates are really, really boring, I'll be honest with you, because it just really gets into like the semantics and you're not really talking about what the debate should be about. It's really just the topic basically shifts from cats are better than dogs to this definition is fair, which the proposition is advocating for, and this definition is unfair, which the opposition is advocating for. And it also becomes difficult for the proposition because now they're like fighting a war on two fronts, basically. Because not only are they trying to say, oh yeah, our topic is totally fair for this reason, this reason, this reason, they also have to carry on with the debate as if everything's going normally. So they have to say all those reasons, and they're like, and now let's get on to actually why cats are more agile than dogs, and then they have to list their own points. So it can get really complicated, it can get really messy, it can get really boring. It's not fun. I mean, we try very, very hard for the debaters to not make the definition unfair because then it just results in an unfun debate, essentially. Are there any questions about defining the topic? Because I assure you, at some point, someone here will encounter a definitional debate. It's not common, but it happens. I'm gonna like throw a number out there, maybe like 5% of all debates, just because one team poorly defines the topic, essentially.
Omar, I have a question.
Yeah.
So, you said that both teams are gonna debate whether the topic is debatable, but we'll also debate the actual topic. So, how does that work when you're given each speaking role on either side? Like,
So it basically just means that you have like a lot that you want to talk about in this very limited amount of time. Because, for example, if you're the proposition and you define this topic in one way and you're like, this is a fair topic, part of proving that it's fair means like carrying forward with the debate as normal, because that's what you would do in a normal debate. So you're trying to advocate for all the reasons why you say that topic is fair, and then you also just want to continue the debate normally with the normal points that you had probably prepared beforehand. Um, the opposition technically doesn't need to respond to any of the proposition's points in the definitional debate. So any of the the normal prepared responses, they only need to attack the points about whether the topic is fair or unfair.
okay, so they're not gonna advance any arguments or
Yeah,
they're not gonna refute their
yeah. Because if they could refute any of the proposition's points, that would mean that the topic is debatable.
Got it. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
no problem. Brother Zafe?
Yeah, one thing I've noticed though, when the opposition decides to contest a definition, I mean, that sometimes is very sort of in their own opinion, it's not debatable, but that may not be in the same eyes of the judge. So I've always found that it's sort of a risky proposition, even to assume that it's not debatable. And I've seen some opposition say, "Hey, this is not debatable. We don't agree with this." But it's a long time they got to speak for 5, 5, and 4. So in
Mhm.
that circumstance, they will continue that argument. It's not debatable, but we will put our own arguments forth and try to oppose what they're saying at the same time. Just how you said, the proposition is fighting two fronts. The opposition is also having to put two fronts because otherwise they're putting all their eggs in that one basket and saying it's not, debatable, because that's really putting a lot of faith in the judge having the same
Yeah.
feelings that you do.
It's a risky proposition, and like you really better be certain that that topic is undebatable or unfair before you go into this. I guess technically, yes, as the opposition you could have a few points to try and debate it anyway, but again I feel like that kind of defeats the point of it, because if you can adequately refute these points, you're kind of showing them that, oh, actually it is a debatable topic. But I've seen there's situations where basically the opposition tries to say it's an unfair definition, but it blows up in their face, because then the proposition just comes back and says, no, you could have said this, you could have said this, you could have said this, you could have said this. And sometimes in that situation, the opposition, they will like actually relent, and they'll be like, nah, actually it was a fair definition, our bad. And then they try and like basically save themselves by just returning it to a normal debate. In that situation, it's technically still possible for the opposition to win, but now they're like at a heavy disadvantage because they spent so much time trying to say that the topic was unfair, that they'd have to do like a lot of legwork, and the proposition has to make a lot of mistakes for the opposition to still have a chance in that situation. Yes, Brother Hassan?
I should know this somewhere, but Dr. Zaif kind of reminded me. Does the judge decide whether the topic is not debatable, or and then you move into a topic debate, or
So,
does that work?
so I'm going to go to basically the role of the judge,
Okay.
because I think that that like kind of answers all of these things.
All right. Thank you.
How does a judge approach a debate? There's a saying where we say that basically judges leave their brain at the door when they enter a debate. A judge should have absolutely no opinions about anything as soon as they enter the debate room. So if what's it called? Um, they're just trying to listen to what the proposition is saying and what the opposition is saying, and they're making a decision almost solely based on that. I might go into a few exceptions later, but it's really just what is being said in that room. So a very extreme example of this for is maybe if the proposition says cats are they define the topic as cats are more agile than dogs. Any like normal, reasonable human being knows that's true. Cats are more agile than dogs, and it would be an unfair definition. But if the opposition, for whatever reason, does not denote that as an unfair definition, the debate should proceed normally. The judge should not be thinking, oh, I know what's actually correct and I know what's incorrect. And yeah, that's an unfair definition, and the opposition shouldn't have to deal with that. And so therefore, I'm giving the debate to the opposition. That's wrong. That's the wrong way to judge. You need to only go based on what is being said in the debate. If the opposition comes back and they say it's unfair for these reasons, then at that point you can say like, okay, the opposition gave some good reasons. They gave some stronger arguments, so now I can side in favor with the opposition because they made the stronger argument. That's what you're supposed to do, basically. This is also like key for things like contentious topics. Like maybe if the topic is about something like the Second Amendment should be amended, maybe some of us here have like strong feelings about whether it should or it shouldn't be amended. Even in that case, like you're supposed to like leave your brain at the door. You're not supposed to bring any of your opinions to the table. Maybe you in your own head, you have some stronger arguments in favor or against the topic that the proposition and opposition are not bringing up. You can't bring up those arguments. You can only go with what is being said by those debaters. Maybe the debater delivers a really good argument, but they like deliver, sorry, maybe they have a really good point, but they deliver it improperly. You can't be like, oh, I see what he was trying to say. You can't do that. It's solely on their job to deliver that point, explain it, give the reasoning, give the evidence. If the evidence is like incorrect and you know it's incorrect, it's not your job to say, oh, I know that that evidence is incorrect. That's the general rule of thumb. And I'll go into a few of the exceptions in a second. Yes, Brother Hassan?
No, no, sorry. I need to lower my hand.
Okay. Yes, brother. Sorry, remind me your name. What does the K stand for? I think you're muted.
All right. Brother Khabib.
Hey,
Khabib.
Kameen?
Khabib?
Khabib.
Yeah, Khabib. You got it.
K-A-B-E-E.
Yeah, yeah, K-A-B-E-E-D. Most people usually spell K-A-B-I-D.
Okay, Brother Khabib, what is your
So I just had a quick question about how motions are framed. Um,
Sure.
so if we take that example, cats are better than dogs, right? Is it the case that motions will can be phrased, however, that is, can they or will they use ambiguous language, or do motions attempt to craft the language in such a way that, if it say the motion was apples are better than oranges,
Mm-hmm.
right? The proposition could come up and say, well, we're comparing apples and oranges here,
Yeah.
right? Like, so how are we supposed to penetrate this resolution? So I'm just curious if the expectation here is that or is there an expectation for how emotion may be phrased?
So that's actually one of the categories that we judge the debaters on, and I'll go more into that when we talk about the rubric, inshallah. But basically, there is a certain like threshold that teams are supposed to meet when they define a topic. They should obviously narrow it down somewhat. They theoretically could just start talking about apples and oranges without even addressing any of those things. They could do that, but we'd judge them very, very low on how well they defined the topic. And it also kind of doesn't give the debate much direction. So even if they aren't directly defining the topic, maybe the points that they're making can kind of like maybe it can kind of like imply what the definition is, but they should be very, very clear in defining the topic. And it's a risky strategy too, because basically, if the proposition doesn't define the topic specifically enough, then it's the opposition's right to basically bring up any other point that they want to, and it would be valid because the proposition never narrowed the scope in any way. So, like maybe a topic is something like, oh, the monarchy should be abandoned, and the proposition doesn't define any of that. They just start making a lot of points about like the British monarchy, and they say, "Oh, these are all the horrible things that the British monarchy did. This is why it's outdated. This is why it's a threat to democracy. This reason, this reason, this reason, and that's why the monarchy should be abandoned." Yeah, the monarchy should be abandoned. And then maybe the other team can come up and say something like, "Actually, there's a lot of really, really good examples of monarchies that help society, and they were really good for the people. They weren't oppressive." And maybe they give specific examples of like I'm just making stuff up here, but it's like maybe like, oh, the king of Luxembourg, he really helped his people, he benefited them. King Shaka of the Zulu tribe, he was a fantastic leader. He really, really benefited people. So you can't just make a universal blanket statement that the monarchy should be abandoned when actually there's more citizens of monarchies and positive monarchies that benefited people. I'm obviously just like making stuff up, but I'm like basically showing you how because the proposition did not narrow the scope to just the British monarchy, they've just opened the door for the opposition to talk about whatever they want, and that's how the opposition could basically win the debate. And it's not like the proposition can come back and say like, "Oh, actually, we meant the British monarchy the whole time." Then the opposition can be like, "Well, you should have defined that in your topic, and you didn't." So these points stand. Brother Zaif, what is your question?
Yeah, it's actually not a question. I just want to make sure, brother, just to elaborate for Brother Hassan's point, just for any new people to debate. Because some of these debates can be quite contentious in terms of, like you said, definitions and things like that. But I think what you were trying to say was the judge does not get involved at all during the whole debate process. Throughout the whole thing, in between, they're not making any comments or their own insights until the very end. Because I just can tell if people are not experienced, the debaters may reach out to the judge. Isn't that not debatable? Why are we here? The judge should be really mute the whole time until the very end when they give their assessment, correct?
Yeah, correct. Absolutely. The judge is supposed to have as little input on everything as possible. Only time the judge really steps in is for like logistical stuff like time, or maybe the audience is getting rowdy. So you can say like, the audience, please be quiet. Like next speaker, come up to the stand. They really should not be involved in any way, shape, or form. Even if like I'm gonna give another example here. Like even if they define it as like cats are more agile than dogs, and then the opposition comes up and says that's an unfair definition, but they don't say anything else. Like you as a judge cannot make arguments for the opposition in that case, even if you do agree with them on principle. That's their job. If the opposition doesn't say anything and the proposition just says like, oh no, actually it is fair, and they try and give some reasonable points and they try and continue the debate as normal, then you're gonna have to give it to the proposition, even though you know objectively that yeah, that topic was defined in an unfair way. The only situations that you would like need to actually use your brain is like for like very, very specific things. If there's just like something that's like so obvious that you know it's just like not true. So maybe like someone says something like, I don't know, maybe I'm just making up a point here. Maybe they say something like, uh, I don't know, trees are not plants. Okay. The proposition says trees are not plants. And the opposition comes back and says, that's actually incorrect. Trees are plants. You can just believe them at that point, at that face value. They don't need to come up and say, like, according to biologists, they define plants as photosynthetic organisms that produce their own food and have cell walls. The opposition doesn't need to go that into detail to disprove the other point. You can just believe them when they say, trees are plants. The proposition is incorrect. That's fine. Um,
I was just going to add for stuff that isn't general knowledge, things that maybe you have specific knowledge about, maybe you read current events, maybe you're knowledgeable in those departments. You cannot fill in the blanks if either side makes a point. Like, let's say they say something like, I don't know, or the US does not support Israel or something very specific or something like that, right? You cannot fill in the blanks for a team because the other team needs to call them out on that. So otherwise, the proposition or the opposition, that point stands until it is refuted by the other team, even if you know that that is incorrect.
Yeah. And you might deduct them points for things like logic and reasoning, but for the debate, it just continues as normally. So literally the entire debate can go with the proposition saying the United States doesn't support Israel, and that's a valid point until the other team says something. Another example for this is actually something that happened. At one point, they were talking, I think, about like all the damage that America has done to other countries, basically like through imperialism. And then they said there was a point where they said like the United States destroyed the Congo. They went in, they abused the people, they took all their resources. It was one of the worst like genocides and abuses of power that we had ever seen. Like in my head, in that situation, I knew that they had accidentally mistaken the United States for I believe it was um, the King of Belgium. Because Belgium, when they colonized the Congo, they did a lot of horrible, horrible atrocities to the Congo. But this team had mistakenly attributed that to the United States instead of to Belgium. But because I knew that, and that's like not something that a reasonable, like, I don't know, a first year college student would know about, basically, I just let that point stand, even though they were factually incorrect. So yeah, that's basically how a judge approaches the debate. I'm gonna go quickly back to the debate format here. So just as a general overview for how this works is the first speaker proposition will define the topic. Then they will list their own points. They'll typically say anywhere between 2 to 3 points. Maybe if they're a really weak team, they might only say 1 point, or maybe they'll try and squeeze a lot of them in. Who knows? They can, if they talk really fast, maybe they can squeeze like 5 points in there. And they're just like saying, basically, they usually propose the point, they give some reasoning for that point, and then they give evidence for that point as well. That's the basic structure of a point. They basically make those points, then they sit down. Then the opposition will come up, and the first thing that the opposition usually does is they will try and address each of those the proposition's points, points by point, and either say like why it's incorrect, why it's negligent, why it doesn't really matter, or like why it's irrelevant to the debate. They're just trying to knock out all those points and say, and you know, just say like they're not valid or they're not important. And then once they basically attempt to refute all of those points, then they will try and say their own points. And then the second speaker for the proposition, he does basically the exact same thing, he or she. They try and refute all the opposition's points, and then they say their own points. Then the second speaker opposition comes up, they try and refute all the proposition's points, and then they say their own points. That's the structure basically for the first four speakers. And then the third speaker opposition, the third speakers, again, they do not bring up their own points. They're actually not allowed to bring up their own points. All they're trying to do is they're basically trying to say, like, these are the points that the other team made. These are our refutations to them, and these are our points. This is why they are superior. They might go the extra mile and say, now the other team tried to refute our points by saying this, this, and this. However, they still stand and they're still better and they're still really important for this, this, this reason. I'm giving you like a very, very basic structure of how it works. The other teams will try and be a lot more eloquent. They'll try and like connect their refutations to their own points. They'll try and make everything flow together. But that's like the basic core structure of how the debate works and how the points work. And then at the end of the thing, basically, this is an example of a let's see. This is an example of like some of the notes that I took. It might be like difficult to see. You'll all have access to a flow chart like this. This is the way that I arrange it. I'm trying my best because it's mirrored, but basically I basically listed out each of the points that the proposition was making, and then I wrote an arrow to see how the opposition tried to refute them. And then I had a separate section here, that's the line, that was the opposition's own points. And it was just this carrying over all the way to the end. Like a really good debate will take this point, and then I'll see what the refutation is, and then I'll see how the proposition tried to refute that refutation, and then I'll see how the opposition tried to refute that refutation, and then I'll see how both of them tried to sum up and make heads or tails of which was stronger, the original point or the refutation. So it can get really complicated. The points should be carried over. A good debater will not just bring up their own points, but they'll continue to advocate for the points that their previous speakers brought up, and it'll just like get carried all over. This is also really, really important. And this is a category that the teams will talk about also. We're going to be judging the kids on structure. And when a debate has a lot of structure, the speakers are really good at structuring their points. It's very, very easy to follow all these things. If a debater does not have a lot of structure, things can get really, really confusing. And this is a point where you, as a judge, you may have to use a little bit of your brain power to try and organize things for them, but not too much, but just a little bit, just to make heads or tails of what is happening. Yes, Yumna.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
So this handout that you just showed, the flow chart, will
Yeah.
that be given to us on the day of, or should we print them beforehand?
This will be given to you on the day of. I think you can access it in the live doc, but we will have lots of copies of these for you to use. We will also have copies of the judging ballot. This is where you will use to score all the debaters, and we will also have copies of the rubric. And I'll make sure I go over this when I talk about all the categories that you're going to be judging them on.
Okay, jazakallah khair.
No problem. I would also recommend, though, all judges bring some scrap piece of papers and a pen or a pencil to write with, and bring some spares too, because you're going to be walking around. You might lose something. It's just always good to have a little bit of scrap with you so that you can, do what you need to do with it. Let's talk about POIs then. So, in this structure, this is pretty simple. It's like I call up the speaker, they stand up, they speak for 5 minutes, and then they sit down. But during that speech, there's something that's allowed called POIs. A POI is a point of information. It's basically like a little interjection that someone who is sitting down tries to come up with to just basically throw a wrench into the other team's plan. It's just like a really quick jab at what is being said. Points of information are allowed within the middle 3 minutes of the 5-minute speech. So a speaker will stand up. They will have 1 minute of protected time where no points of information are allowed. And then they will have 3 minutes where points of information are allowed. And then the final minute of the speech, no points of information are allowed. Only within those middle 3 minutes are points of information allowed. And the way it basically happens is one of the debaters just has to like stand up. They'll make like a signal that's very clearly visible to the judge and to the other debaters. You can see a picture of one of the someone trying to do a POI over there on the bench, and it's the job of the person on the it's the job of the speaker basically who currently has the floor to either take that point of information or ignore or not ignore the point of information, or basically say no, you can't do that. Technically speaking, they might just try and ignore them, but that means that they're not doing their job properly. They should either decisively say, yes, I will take it now, or no, please sit down. They should not just let them stand up there. Any member of the opposing team can POI within those 3 minutes. Maybe all 3 of them stand up and they're like, we all have something to say, clearly. But then it's their job to say, okay, I want to take the one on the left. You can talk. The rest of you, please sit down. Theoretically, you can do as many POIs as you want. And the other teams should try and do as many POIs as they're capable of, but the speaker should control the floor. They shouldn't take all the POIs. They should probably only take 2 to 3 of them. They could theoretically take 4, but if they're taking like 5, then that's a problem because that means that they have no control over the floor, no control over what they're saying, and that also takes up a lot of time because you can't make your own arguments that you planned out for if you're too busy taking POIs. And POI should be really, really quick. They should be just like 10 seconds, just one thing that maybe somebody says something like I keep going back to this cats are better than dogs example. Maybe they say like uh, every single cat is more agile than a dog. And then somebody can stand up and says, what about the African dog that lives in Kenya? It always like out jumps lions that are trying to hunt it, and lions are cats. So that's just like a quick example of like a POI. So you say you're a POI, you sit down. Theoretically, you could just stand up there and ramble for as long as you want, but that means that you as a debater are doing a bad job in giving the POI, and also the speaker is doing a bad job because basically once they get the point, they should say, "All right, thank you, I understand. Please sit down." If they're taking like 15 seconds to speak, and the person on the stand is just like letting them talk, that's a problem. They should not ramble on. Yes, brother Sayed.
I'm sorry, I have to drop. So I just have to. So I will continue watching WhatsApp. Okay.
Sure. And no problem. We will take a recording of this. We'll put
Okay.
it up on the judge's WhatsApp, and please do just make sure that you watch through all that and
Sure.
just do all the other things that are required for the judges, inshallah.
Thank
I
you
was just
very
going to
much.
add on to that really quickly for POIs. A lot of this stuff is speaker's discretion. So when a speaker is speaking, it's their job to dictate how many POIs are taken, what POIs are rejected, how long the POIs are. For example, sometimes I've seen this happen where the opposition or whoever's giving the POI will just eat time by continually, speaking, and then the person who's speaking will forget to, will forget to tell them, okay, I get your point or whatever, and they'll just try to eat time. So things like that, even if someone gives a POI outside of protected time, it's not the judge's responsibility to say, hey, that's protected time. Don't do that.
Yeah.
It's the job of the person who's speaking to say, okay, this is protected time and not take that POI. If they take it, then that's on them. But pretty much when it comes down to POIs, it's on the speaker to dictate that pretty much.
Osman is like so right, and this also goes into what Brother Zaif was saying about like how little the judges should actually step in and do things because like you're not allowed to do a POI in the first minute. But if the debater stands up and then the speaker on the stand just like takes the POI in the first minute, that's on them. They should not have done that. And you don't need to like basically um I would say you don't need to take away points even though both people messed up. Um, Maybe you can possibly deduct a few points from like structure because they're like breaking the structure, but that has like but like the debate can still go basically even though those teams did that incorrectly. It's also worth noting that no POIs are allowed in the final speech at all. Yeah. And so that's good. I think I'm just gonna briefly go over cheering and heckling. Uh, both the audience should be silent for the entire debate, and the other debaters should be silent for the entire debate, unless of course they're trying to like do a POI and they're trying to like signal that oh I'm trying to do a POI. They're probably going to be like whispering and talking to each other to try and like figure out points while the debate is happening. That's fine as long as they're not being super super disruptive. If you notice that somebody is being very, very disruptive, that is a point where you, as the judge, can like step in to try and maintain a little bit of order. Because at that point, if it's so disruptive that like the other team is they're like distracted and they don't know what's happening, that becomes unfair. But even in that situation, you shouldn't interrupt the debate in the middle of the thing and be like, "Other team, please be quiet." No, you should like wait until the speech ends, and then you can say, "Oh, reminder to both teams." Please be silent and keep all chatter while the speech is going to a minimum. That's just a good reminder to tell them to be quiet. Yes, brother Zaif.
Yeah, the question is, you mentioned about cheering and heckling. So, and also there's no POIs during the third speeches. So, and I noticed during the sample debates, they were yelling out things like shame or whatnot.
Yeah.
So if during the third debate, let's just say the third speaker brings up new information, which they're not supposed to do, and then the other team yells out point of order, by saying
Yeah.
that they shouldn't have as a judge, since they're not really supposed to do any POIs during that time, but they yell out point of order. Is that something we as a judge should take in consideration since they mentioned that and they mentioned that
Yeah.
they're because otherwise they wouldn't have any way to
Yeah.
refute it if they're the last speaker.
You should definitely take it into account when you are judging them, but like you're not supposed to step in and say like,
Right.
ah, yeah, he's right. Just that just means that you score them probably a lot lower on I would probably say logic and reasoning because if they tried to bring up a new point, they're not allowed to do that. They're not supposed to do that. They're clearly breaking the rules, so you would deduct them on logic and reasoning. And this is another example where like basically you're using your brain for the rules essentially. Um,
I think also just to add on to that, I think when a third speaker makes a new point, I don't think you're supposed to
yeah,
consider it or give it weight because they're not allowed to, regardless of how good that point is.
yeah,
A third
correct.
speaker cannot bring up new points.
Correct. And then just to go back to the heckling and cheering kind of thing, basically, cheering some of the teams they might like say here here if someone on their team makes a really really good point, you're allowed to do that from the bench as long as it's not like so disruptive. And you're also allowed to say like shame if someone says something really really horrible, like maybe someone says something like, yeah, you know what, some babies do deserve to die. There's no guarantees here in life. That's something pretty reprehensible. So you would say like shame. The other team is allowed to say that. It'll probably throw some of the other it'll throw the other team off. But if they said something really really horrible, they're going to have to kind of just face the consequences of what they said. And then additionally, the point of order thing. It's that's fair. They're allowed to say point of order. You're not, but you as the judge, again, you don't do anything. You don't like step in and say, yeah, that's correct. You shouldn't do that. You just take that into account when you're scoring them. And then maybe at the end of the debate, you can give feedback and say that was a valid point of order. They shouldn't have done that. Um, so now I'm going to talk about the categories that we use to score the debaters. So there are technically five categories, but you're only scoring the debaters on four each. The reason why that is because there's one category called definition and stance, and you're only judging the first speaker proposition on definition and stance because obviously they are the ones to define it and give the stance of the team. None of the other debaters are going to be redefining the topic or anything like that. And that category, it basically replaces refutation and clash because as the first speaker there's nothing for you to refute. You're starting the debate, so we only judge the first speaker on definition and stance, and then we don't judge them on refutation and clash. For every other team member we judge them on structure, logic and relevance, refutation and clash, and delivery. And then that's also reflected in the ballot that you see here. Uh, you see the first speaker proposition, they're like in a separate category up here. They have different, these are the four things that you're going to be judging them on. And then there's the four things that you're judging all the other speakers are here. The only difference is they replace definition and stance with refutation and clash for the other speakers. And again, you'll have access to all of this. I will
Just to
also
add on to
say,
that really
yeah,
quickly, all these categories are evaluated independently. So if you give someone let's say a 5 for delivery, they're very present, they're making eye contact, they have good vocal inflections. That doesn't mean you necessarily have to give them a high score for logic and relevance. Evaluate that individually because it's happened sometimes where someone has really good delivery, but the points that they make don't necessarily apply to the topic or the logic really isn't there. So always make sure you're evaluating these individually and don't look at other categories for how you evaluate a category.
yeah. Um, like there's people who are really really good speakers but they're really not saying anything at all. Check every single politician in government. They're all very very good speakers but a lot of times they're not really saying anything of substance. So good job, Osman. But I would say one caveat to that also is the categories of logic and relevance and refutation and clash. Sometimes these two things can kind of meld together because like you're like, oh, well, they did use a lot of logic in that refutation, and they're like, or like, ah, that was a very irrelevant refutation. So like these two things can kind of like mix together a little bit. So just keep that in mind. And this rubric also that you're going to be using to judging them, this is going to be your best friend. We're going to have a bunch of copies printed out. You will always want to consult this. I consult this all the time, even when I'm debating. It's just really good at showing you how you're going to score the debaters. They're scored on a scale of 1 to 5. Basically, you should not be scoring anybody below a 1. The worst that you should give someone is a 1. Don't give them less than that. And the best that you're ever going to give somebody is a 5. 5 basically means no notes. Incredible. They did everything right. You very, very, very rarely give out 5s. And you very rarely give out 1s too, to be honest. Like if someone just went up, stood up and just said like, "Hey guys, the other team's wrong," and then sat down, yeah, then maybe you're gonna give them a 1 for refutation in clash because they didn't say anything. But that's a really extreme example, and most teams won't do that. Um, when you judge debaters, we don't want to get too incremental because it just makes it really hard for the tabulator. So please just go in increments of 5. So say like 1.5, 2, 2.5, etc. Don't give me like, please don't throw in like, I think that's a 1.25 actually, or a 1.7. You don't need to go that specific. Just decide if you're like, oh, it's a 1.7, just decide if you want to give them a 1.5 or a 2. Just pick one. Um,
I just wanted to add one thing. Probably the question I get asked the most from new judges is there sometimes there's some insecurity about the way that they score. Because they look at my sheet or maybe the judge next to them and say, "Oh, you gave them a 4, but I gave them a 3. Oh, maybe I'm not doing this correctly." A lot of the scoring is up to judges' discretion. So when it comes to assigning points, their judges will be more conservative. Maybe it's really hard to impress them. It's hard for them to give count it a 4, or they'll be more liberal and maybe their lowest score is a 3, right? That's fine. What matters is that you're on the same consensus as to who wins the debate, and also you're relatively around the same ballpark as who the good speakers are. So I wouldn't take too much stock into, oh, this person gave them a 4, but I'm at a 3. That's not relevant. Remember, a lot of these things are up to your discretion. So judge in the way that you think is best and go with your gut. Trust yourself.
Yeah. And again, a lot of you are new judges. It's okay if you don't fully uh um you don't have the same level of experience as an experienced judge does. You'll get better and better as the day goes on. You'll notice more things. It's totally cool even if your score is different from a more experienced judge. Maybe you consult the experienced judge and say, "Oh, why did you give them that score?" And the experienced judge can say something and be like, "Oh, I never really considered that, but you're right." So, learn, pay attention to what the more experienced judges do, but also, like Osman said, trust yourself, write it out as you feel. And like even me as a more experienced judge, I always like what's it called? I feel like it takes me 1 or 2 debates to really get in the moment and feel of like how I'm doing it. So I can feel my debate skills and my precision in how I'm grading them increase as the day goes on. And experienced judges, even like in the finals, we can disagree with each other. We can have wildly different scores. It's okay. Yes, Yumna.
Will new judges be paired or like put in groups with experienced judges, or is it random?
If we have enough new judges and if we have enough experienced judges, absolutely. And I do believe that we will. I think there's going to be at most 7 debates happening concurrently, and I think we have at least 14 judges. So so unless like a lot of judges just do not show up, it's almost guaranteed that you will be paired with an experienced judge, and it'll be like the two of you basically. In that situation, the more experienced one is going to be the lead judge. So like default to him if there's any question, default to him or her if there's any questions. And yeah, you basically learn from them. Later on in the day, for the last round of the preliminaries, we're probably going to have less judges because a lot more were available in the morning. Worst case scenario, we might have to basically have you judge by yourself. But ideally, if we're in that situation, and inshallah we won't be, you will have judged the first 2 debates with someone else, so you'll be trained up well enough to be able to do this last debate by yourself, hopefully. Again, the goal is to have 2 judges for each preliminary debate. For semifinals, we're probably going to have 3 judges, and then we're going to have 3 to 4 judges for the finals, inshallah.
Inshallah. As a follow-up, the timekeeper, is that like a unique person or is that also just one of the judges?
If we do, ideally, when we have so many people, it's usually best when the timekeeper is separate from the judges. But for the preliminaries, for example, we won't have enough judges to spare. So one of you will have to be the timekeeper. And I'll go over like the exact timekeeping logistics today, inshallah. And we'll reiterate it before the tournament begins. I think Osman is going to do like a little run through and we'll like explain how that works
Yeah.
on location, inshallah.
I just wanted to add two things. So with the scoring, keep in mind that you're scoring each speaker on 4 categories, and there's 6 speakers in total. So that's 24 points that you need to score. And oftentimes the scoring is done within those 15 to 30-second increments in between speakers. So that means that the level of precision that you need to have is not necessarily super cutting edge. I wouldn't sweat too much about, oh, should I give him a 4? Should I give him a 4.5? If it's really eating you up, then you could change it after the fact. But go with your gut, go with what you think is best. Also, second point, I will be there for the entire duration of the debate tournament tomorrow. So if there's any questions regarding anything judging related specifics, feel free to find me and ask me because Omar and Ibrahim are usually busy with logistics stuff.
Yeah, that would be greatly appreciated. Please just like ask Usman if you have any questions. I know on the day of this is like just organizational thing, but everyone's gonna be coming up to basically me and asking questions, parents, kids, everyone. So if you can direct all of your questions to Osman, I would I would really appreciate that.
Yeah. Also, not all your questions. Like I don't know where the bathroom is, but anything
Oh, but
judging related,
yeah.
anything judging related, I got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm gonna go over each of the categories briefly then, so that you can kind of know it. But again, consult the rubric. It's in the judges material. It's in the live doc. I'll show you that link. And we're also gonna send out an email today, inshallah, that has even some more information. So you're going to be judging them on structure. This is just how well organized their speech is. Is it conveyed in a clear and logical way? Is it easy to follow? Do they effectively synthesize their previous team members' arguments into their own arguments? And like how well do they integrate the refutations to the other points into their own speech? And again, like a really good hallmark of a team that's has good structure is you can completely tell what is their points, what is the opposing team's points, what the refutations are to the opposing team's points. It just makes everything really easy to follow. Logic and relevance. That's mostly about that team's own points. It demonstrates how aware they are of the definition of the topic, how well their points align with the topic, how relevant they are to the topic, and just how good their arguments are. Like, oh, they provided a lot of reasoning, they provided a lot of evidence. It's just a really solidly well-constructed, excellent point. And going back to the metaphor of like the vase and filling it up with water, like if a team has a lot of logic and relevance, every single point is just going to be like a huge jug full of water into that vase. And if you're the opposition and you're using a lot of logic and relevance, every good point is going to be like a gigantic gaping hole inside that vase. Then we have refutation and clash. This is just basically how effectively they rebut or refute the other team's points. Like how complete are their refutations? Did they like if they took the other team's points and they just absolutely eviscerated it, there's nothing for that other team to stand on anymore because they destroyed every single one of that point from like every single angle so thoroughly. They did a good job with like the refutation and clash. And also it's important to incorporate how well they what's it called? Responded to POIs. So if they're like a master at responding to POIs, then you'll probably want to score them a little bit higher and on their refutation and clash. Whereas if they're really bad at responding to POIs, then you'll probably want to not score them as high as you could. Um, and also on this point, we judge POIs as in refutation and clash. So if if someone is like always has fantastic POIs, they're super cutting to they're super to the point, they're really effective, then you can give that person an increased score in refutation and clash. And like Osman said, you can go back and revise score. So maybe if you gave one guy like his refutation and clash was really bad, I'm gonna give him a 2. Oh, but his POIs throughout the whole debate, they're actually incredible. I'm gonna up him to a 3 just because he did so well on that. We have delivery. This is the easiest one to go through. Just, how well do they speak? Do they stutter? How clearly, how eloquently do they talk? Are they funny? Do they incorporate humor? Those are all actually really important things that you can use to judge someone's delivery. Delivery is the easiest thing to judge, but it's also the most irrelevant to the debate. You can be the best speaker in the world and have absolutely no structure, no logic and relevance, no refutation and clash. You can get a 5 on the speech, but you get like a 1 on everything else. As a judge, it's also your job to not be tricked by a really, really good speaker. Some judges, they're like, wow, that guy talked amazingly. Look at that vocabulary. It was incredible. I think he incorporated the Quran into that speech. That was incredible. That's amazing. I'm gonna give the debate to him because he just spoke so amazingly. Don't be like that, okay? Actually look at the logic and relevance and refutation and the clash and how they structured it, and that's how you need to judge who won and who lost the debate. The only point where you should really be considering delivery as like this person won the debate or this person lost the debate is if the debate is so tight that you have to go like, wow, you know what? It really comes down to the delivery because they executed and expressed that point just a hair bit clearer than the other team tried to refute it. That is like the one situation where your like delivery comes into play that much. And even then, that's so rare. Like I'd say less than 1% of debates are decided on delivery. Even in that situation, I try and default it to reputation, clash, and logic and relevance. I think you should decide the debate on that metric. And then we
Also,
have
correct me if
definition.
I'm wrong, Omar,
Yeah.
but for delivery, we do not score blatant reading, right?
No, yeah, okay. Thank you so much. Some of the kids will bring up their notes. They'll just try and basically read off of the paper. That's poor delivery because you're just reading. You're not actually debating. It's totally okay for you to glance at your notes or even like to hold your notes, but if you're reading, that's an issue. It should just be like a glance and then you talk.
Yeah, you'll
Um,
see this especially with the given topics because obviously teams have had about 2 weeks to prepare. But if they're just stating quotes or, it seems like the points are coming from somewhere else, like this is clearly they don't have any sort of, they're kind of just reading a paragraph and doesn't have any sort of link to what they said before or after, then even if it's said well, we're not going to score them well in that work. So
yeah.
someone who kind of just sounds like a robot is going to receive a 2 or 1,
hmm
depending.
And you're allowed to like read tiny bits. Like maybe there's a direct quote that they're trying to quote. And it's okay if they read it off in that situation or a precise statistic, but that should only just be like, 5 seconds and then they're done.
Yeah, as long as it
Um,
makes sense in their speech, that's fine.
Yep. And then lastly, we have definition and stance. Again, this is you're only judging the very first speaker for the proposition on this. It's just how clearly they define the topic, how specific they are. Maybe they're not making it too specific. And just like they're setting the scope of the debate and they're illustrating their own team's stance. And then I'm also just going to give an example about the definitional debate part. If they went up there, they didn't define the topic at all, and they just started talking, you would grade them low on definition and stance. If they defined the topic like incorrectly, like it's like a truism or a tautology, or you say something like cats are better than dogs because cats are more agile, and I don't know. That again, it's an objective fact that they're defining the topic as. In that situation, you are allowed to judge them very harshly on definition and stance because you can use your brain and be like, that's an unfair definition. But again, it's a job of the other team to say it's an unfair definition and for them to win the debate. So there's actually no the highest scoring team may not necessarily be the team that wins the debate. A lot of new judges, they just calculate all the points and be like, okay, this team had 34 points and this team had like 35 points. So clearly the one with 35 points won. That's not how you judge a debate. Again, in this situation, you can judge someone very harshly on definition and stance because you know that's an unfair definition. But if the other team doesn't call it out, that team can still win with that unfair definition and with that very low score. So now I'm just going to go on to basically who wins because this is what we were talking about. It's so no single element is used to determine the winner. Um, it's not necessary that the team that scored higher wins. I will say that that's usually the case. Usually the team that scores higher wins, but not always. This is a correlation situation. It's not a causation situation. Um, and remember, the burden of proof lies with the proposition. So if you end up in a situation where you're like, it's a 50-50 split because the proposition didn't go that extra mile and like go to that 51%, that's a situation when you're like, okay, I'll give it to the opposition because the proposition needs the burden of proof is on them. Um, yeah, it's you know, you're measuring a bunch of things. You're measuring like how many points were made. You're measuring how strong the points were made. Maybe the proposition only has 1 point in the entire debate, but it's such an incredible, phenomenal point, and the entire and like it's clearly the most important. And the opposition has like 5 points, but they're all really, really small, and they're all really, really weak, and they're all really, really unimportant. That 1 point that the proposition has could trump all those little points that the opposition has. And I've seen it happen. Like I like maybe at one point there was like a debate about the United States or something, and then the proposition came up with a point about like the fundamental nature of democracy and how the entire idea of America's identity rests on the preservation of democracy. And the opposition came up with a lot of good points, but they were all so small that they didn't overcome this huge idea and necessity of democracy. So because of that, the proposition won. This is also a situation where kind of like Islamic concepts come into play. Like maybe there's a lot of like very practical, very utilitarian points that the opposition is coming up with, but then the proposition comes up with a point that says like this is our Islamic duty, and this is something that's clearly ascribed to us in the Quran, in the Hadith, and they like do a perfect argument. In that situation, you would probably give it to the proposition. Um, yeah, so like it's yeah, and you know, this is kind of something that people use in real life too. Like maybe if there's something in the Quran that like by modern scientific conventions, if we're only going by like science, you're like, oh, that thing in the Quran will be incorrect. But you know, as a Muslim, that the Quran is like the word of God. So that idea of the Quran being perfect, this comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that trumps all these other points. Like that has to be true. So that again, that's just like a real life example of how that one super important, super critical, absolutely indisputable fact can trump all the other little points. Um, this thing, I mean, it can get really contentious. You might have to go through the points. Sometimes you'll end a debate and you'll be like, I have no idea who won. And then you'll have to go through each point individually. What I usually do is I just like basically go through all the points. I see which ones are still standing at the end, which ones are have been negated, and then I just see like, okay, and which team had the stronger and more points overall, and I just like kind of measure it out. Again, that's why the vase analogy is really, really good because some holes will be bigger than others. Some will be really, really small. Um, you'll just have to measure it out. And inshallah, you'll have like two judges with you. So you can actually both talk to each other and both hash it out. Maybe one person noticed something that the other team didn't notice. Sorry, that the other judge didn't notice. And, you know, work together to come to a consensus, inshallah.
I was just going to add, when it comes to coming to a consensus when the judges are deliberating, experienced judges will usually kind of be referred to when it comes to logistics. But when it comes to deliberation, if you're a new judge, never take an experienced judge's word or their decision as gospel. Every judge should be able to back up the reasoning and back up their decision making. So let's say you're deliberating and maybe you're a newer judge and an experienced judge says something like, oh, that doesn't really make sense to me, or I kind of disagree with that. Don't be afraid to explain. Don't be afraid to ask for an explanation or say, oh, I maybe you missed this point or maybe you missed this.
Yeah.
The entire point of this deliberation is for people to explain where they're coming from, kind of explain why they scored certain things a certain way, why they think this person won. So don't be afraid to communicate your point of view, even if it's in disagreement with your fellow judges.
And then also on that point, you know, be humble enough to recognize that there might have been something that you missed. Please do pay attention to what the other judge said. Be respectful, obviously. Like, you know, you're Muslims. It's important to talk to each other and disagree and respectfully come to an agreement or a consensus. And, you know, as a new judge, you will probably be a little bit more unconfident. You'll probably be looking for a little bit more assurance and guidance. That's okay. Like the experienced judge is there to like basically teach you for like the first two debates. And that's good. You can ask some questions for and clarifications. That's totally cool. That's totally all right. And yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
just ask them questions and they'll probably explain things to you. Did
I
you have
think
something else?
the best rule of thumb is to put yourself in the back seat. Remember, it's not about you. So let's say you think, oh, the whole time the proposition wants there's so when we're deliberating, I'm gonna push for the proposition. Remember, it's not about you, it's about working with your judges to come up with the most fair, impartial decision possible. That involves looking at things from all angles.
Mhm.
And you should be humble enough to say, oh, maybe I didn't think about this, or maybe I didn't think about this.
Mhm. In a worst case scenario, if it's like Both of you are just completely opposed to each other. Don't worry, like as long as you're still respectful, of course. But one says like, "I'm sorry, man, it's the opposition," and the other one's like, "I'm sorry, my guy, it's the proposition." And like you just can't come to an agreement. Basically, it defers to the judge with the most seniority in that situation. It doesn't usually happen, but sometimes it does. If there's like three judges, for example, the two other judges might be able to outweigh the opinion of the judge with the most seniority. So we'll just do it democratically at that point. Um, yeah, and I think that's pretty much everything that you need to know about judging. And then after this, I'm just going to briefly cover logistics and then we'll end the training. Does anyone have any questions about judging, the rubric, points of information, structure, any of these things at all? Nope. Okay. Then we're going to, yes, Brother Zafe.
Yeah, I just want to clarify for the preliminary rounds. I know there's a lot of you want to get the winner correct, but in the end, it doesn't really matter in terms of who moves on to the knockout rounds, right? Because it's really
Yeah.
based upon the speaker scores.
You are correct. And that's a perfect segue into kind of just the logistics and the scoring and all those other things. Because the way this tournament is structured, we have three preliminary debates, then we have the semifinals, and then we have the finals. The way we are going to judge the preliminary debates is the people who advance to the semifinals, it's going to be the teams with the highest average score. So it's important to come up with a winner and I guess a loser for the debate so that you can give feedback to the teams and you can say this is why this team won and this is why this other team won. But at the end of the day, the team that advances is going to be based on the scores that they had for all three of the debates. It could be a situation where a team that lost every single debate, maybe they scored really, really highly regardless, they still wind up in the semifinals. It's happened. Oh, well, I don't know if it's happened, but like it could theoretically happen. It's probably unlikely. Again, usually if a team is scoring higher than the other team, usually they're winning. Not always the case though. Um, let's see. Um, I'm actually just going to give an example on that because I think it's really important. Let's say that the proposition, they have an incredible definition, okay? And they have a bunch of amazing, stupendous, spectacularly worded points that are so thorough in their reasoning and in their evidence. And then the opposition just comes up and says, yeah, those are some cool points, but they're completely irrelevant to the debate because this reason. And then they just speak for 30 seconds and then they sit down. In that situation, you'd give the proposition team a lot of really high scoring points for probably structure and delivery, and maybe even their logic and refutation. But if the opposition, what they're saying is true, and all those points were completely irrelevant to the debate based on the proposition's own definition, the opposition would win the debate uh and they would be scored very, very low because they basically spoke for like 30 seconds. They barely said anything. They didn't have any of their own points. They would be getting like ones and ones and ones, maybe a 2.5. But they would still win the debate because at the end of the day, they adequately proved that none of the proposition's points were relevant to this debate. That's an extreme example. You probably won't see something that extreme, but again, that illustrates how a team can score really, really low but still win the debate, and the other team can score really, really high and still lose the debate. And you're going to, again, that's the most extreme situation. You won't see it, but you will see lesser degrees of that extreme situation occur. So I guess let's just, that's just more logistics I'm going to go over again. When you're giving, okay, I'm just going to go over basically your job as a judge. So basically, enter your some of this stuff here might be relevant to an online debate, but I'm just going to roll through what you have to do in person debate. We are going to have the judges assigned to each room, and that there's going to be like a Google Doc that we're going to share inside the judges chat and also inside the live doc. So please make sure you have your phone at handy and you're always like checking WhatsApp for updates and stuff like that. But at some point we're going to say like, oh, the teams have been assigned to their rooms, and that also means the judges have been assigned to their rooms. So you check your phone and you'd be like, oh, okay, it says here I'm in room 5. So then you head your way over to room 5. You wait for the teams. As soon as we say like, hey guys, we're starting at 10:30, you start the debate at 10:30 sharp. The first thing that you want to do is you'll just want to basically fill in all this logistical information, basically write down the names of all the debaters, write down their speaker positions and everything. Oh, actually, no, wait, actually, before that, I'm sorry, my bad. The first thing you want to do when the teams come in is you want to, what's it called? Flip the coin to see who's proposition and who's opposition. And then once you flip the coin, you're gonna give them basically uh, 2 minutes to prepare because they don't know if they're proposition and they don't know if they're opposition. And then they're gonna like rearrange themselves, they're gonna reorient themselves. And once they're like seated in the proper positions and everything, then you're going to like fill out the information for who's proposition and who's opposition. You're gonna do all this logistical stuff. You're gonna make sure both teams are ready. And then you say like, all right, then you're just gonna run through the rules really quickly. Yeah, you're gonna give a little speech that says like, "Assalamu alaikum, thank you all for joining us. The topic before the house is this. The proposition is team AFA1, and the opposition is team MINA3. Um, uh, as a reminder, no electronics are allowed during the debate. Your time will begin as soon as you begin speaking. The first four speakers will each have 5 minutes to speak, and the concluding speakers will each have 4 minutes to speak. The logistics that you're going to say is basically when I tap my hand once, like that, that means 1 minute of speaking time is over, and now POIs are allowed. After 4 minutes, you're going to tap again. That means that POIs are no longer allowed, and the speaker has 1 minute left. After 5 minutes, you're going to tap twice. That means time is up. And then basically, you also should not be taking any notes when time is up. You just like, you can literally just put your pencil down. You shouldn't take anything into consideration after the 5 minutes is over. After 15 seconds overtime, you say time. And then at 30 seconds overtime, you say time, please sit down. So also notice in here, this is again how little the judges actually intercede in the debate. It's they just do the tap twice, and now it's the speaker's job to basically finish up and wrap up what they were saying so that they're not like startled. But you don't cut them off yet. And then at 15 seconds over, you still don't cut them off. You just say time as a reminder that you're going over time. And then at 30 seconds, that's the only time where you say time, please sit down, because we can't have them go over so long that it like disrupts the entire debate. That's what your job is as the judge. And then you take like a minute or two to basically fill out all of your scores. And then as soon as you're done filling out your scores, you say, I'd now like to call to the stand the first speaker from the opposition. You immediately roll. Maybe you're really, really quick and both judges are like done writing all their notes in like 10 seconds. If you just need 10 seconds to write your notes, then immediately call the next speaker to the stand. Obviously, check in with your fellow judges, be like, hey, are you good? Are we good to go? And they're like, yeah, I'm good. And then they're like, okay, I now call to the speaker to the stand, and just do that. And then you repeat this process until the debate concludes. For the fourth speaker, what we do for that one is, I think the policy that I'm going to decide on, and are you paying attention to this, Usman? After 1 minute of speech time, bang the table once. That's the signal that, okay, 1 minute is over. After 3 minutes, bang the table again. That means that they have 1 minute left. And then after 4 minutes, bang the tables twice. That means that their time is up. And then just do the normal, time after 15 seconds, time after 30 seconds. Again,
When
no
you say after
POIs.
4 minutes, do you mean after 5 minutes?
No, this is for the concluding speakers.
Okay.
Yeah. And remember, the concluding speakers, no POIs are allowed. So the bangs are not to tell them, oh, POIs are allowed. This is literally just for them to keep track of their own time. Some of the kids might ask, oh, can I keep track of time on my phone? You're not allowed to do that. We're not allowing any digital or electronics in during the debate at all. They can only use that for research. But once the debate actually starts, they have to put it all away. They have to close it. They have to put it face down. It should not be up there. If they want to bring an alarm clock to keep track of time, sure. If they want to bring a stopwatch, yeah, that's allowed. Maybe they can take their hourglass and flip it over. I'll allow it. But there shouldn't be any electronic things at all. Even if you're not on the stand, no one should be just like researching stuff on their laptop while the person is speaking. That's not allowed. Also, no one from the audience is allowed to come up and help the debaters while the debate is happening. Like no coaches, no parents, no nothing. If
Are
you
we going to
notice
have
like,
a uniform POI procedure, like standing up or?
oh, okay, yeah, good point. Some of the teams have different ways to do POIs. One of them might do this, one of them might just do this, another one might just like stand up and raise their hand. So what I always do is before the debate starts, I ask each team to demonstrate a POI for me. I could say like, could the proposition show me what a POI looks like? And they'll do whatever POI they're doing. And then I'm like, could the opposition show me what a POI looks like? And they'll like show whatever they're doing for a POI. And that's just for your assistance as a judge for you to know, that's what that team how they do POIs. It's okay to have a little bit of difference in how teams do POIs as long as you and the other team know that's how the other team is going to be doing a POI. Some teams might even stand up and they might verbalize, oh, POI while they're doing it. That's allowed too, as long as they're not like super disruptive and they're like POI, 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 POI. That will be an issue.
I think usually we'll encourage some sort of verbalization because oftentimes when someone's speaking, it's kind
Yeah.
of hard to see out of their periphery and see if someone stood up or not. So just saying POI will probably encourage both teams to say that as along with any sort of physicality they want.
You
But
want to do that,
usually we'll
Osman? You
include.
want to like, yeah, okay, we can do that. We can just say like, could you just clarify POI? Again, they don't have
I
to if
really
they don't
could. I
want
mean,
to.
I just find it helpful, I think,
Okay.
because so
Yeah,
nothing goes missed.
we can encourage it. And also, if you do a POI and you say like POI, you stand up, and the other team is not acknowledging you, maybe they didn't notice you, that you as the person doing the POI, you're allowed to say POI again after like 15 seconds to try and get their attention. And then you can do it again if they still didn't get your attention, because again, it's the job of the speaker to basically acknowledge you and say, please sit down, or yes, I'll take it. And then, okay, so after the debate ends, you finish writing down all your notes and everything. You and your fellow judge will leave the room. You'll deliberate. You'll come to a consensus. Try and do this as expeditiously as possible. We really don't want to be delayed. Sometimes judges just take so long to like come to consensus that it kind of delays the entire tournament. We want to avoid this at all costs. Please just be as efficient as possible. Obviously, you can take the time that you need to kind of hash things out, but try and be judicious with your time. Me and a few of the other organizers were also gonna be walking around, and if we notice that like, man, you've been deliberating for like 15 minutes, that's like too long in that situation. So we'll probably say like, hey, you have to come to a conclusion, and then you just have to make some hard choices about who you think won the debate, who you think lost the debate. Yes, Brother Muhammad.
Hey, Salam, I'm gonna have to drop if that's okay.
Sure, no problem. I'm sorry this thing is going on. I'm just going over like some of the procedures and stuff. Inshallah, we'll also cover this while the debate is happening, inshallah. And
Okay.
so just pay attention to your emails and the WhatsApp chat and any other updates that we put there.
All right. Salam.
Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, so that's please don't spend longer than 10 minutes to deliberate a decision. If it's longer than 15, then that's like that's too long in that situation. And then once you come to a decision, you go back into the room, you give feedback to the teams. For the preliminaries, you are allowed to say who won and who lost. And you can even give the team members their scores, but sometimes feedback can be too long as well. So, just we want a uniform procedure basically. You are allowed to give their scores if you have enough time to give their scores and if they ask for it. But if you feel like you're running out of time, say like, hey, sorry, we don't have enough time. I'm afraid I won't be able to tell you what your scores are. Some of the kids might come up and ask if they can see your scores for the preliminaries. We're not going to allow them to look at the scores because we need to keep that like confidential because we're going to do some calculations and stuff. So they can't come up and they can't take a picture of the things or anything. Again, if you have enough time and they ask, you can tell them their scores, but don't like volunteer that information unless they ask because usually it just takes too much time, and only do that at the end after you've given all the feedback and everything. You'll also want to announce the best debater. The best debater is really easy. It's just whichever debater has the highest score. You can take averages if you need to. So if like, I don't know, Judge 1 has this as the highest debater and Judge 2 has this as the highest debater, just basically take the average of what you scored that person, what they scored that person, and what you scored for the other people, and just like whoever has the highest average, just do that. Um, and then if for whatever coincidental reason it's like, oh, it's the exact same average, then just make a decision and be like, yeah, but I think this guy was still better, or this girl like Mariam did an incredible job, so we're just gonna give it to her because the entire debate basically hinged on her speech. That's how you decide the best debater. You can tell them who the best debater is, and then once that's done, say cool. Then you leave and you await the topic for the next round, and then you go to that room and you repeat the process. Um, for semis and finals, for semis, you are allowed to say who the winner is, and whoever the winner is, they're the person that's advancing to the finals. For the semis and finals, we don't you don't advance based on score. At that point, it is determined based on the winner and the loser for the debate. And then for the finals, when we're giving feedback, we just don't say who the winner is. We save that for the award ceremony. Yeah. Last thing I will say about this logistical thing is the impromptu debates. The way this is going to work is we are going to what is it? We are going to announce the impromptu topic 10 and they're gonna have basically 10 minutes to prepare. Um, they don't know if they're proposition, they don't know if they're opposition. They end up in the room, we do the coin flip as usual, and then they have 2 minutes to get ready as prop and 2 minutes to get ready as op, and then you just do the debate normally. And we'll announce the topic in the live chat. We'll announce it out loud. We'll probably have a board that we're going to write stuff on, and we're going to announce it in the WhatsApp group as well. As the judge, I would also say some of the rooms will have whiteboards and expo markers, inshallah. If you do see expo markers and whiteboards, please just take the time to go up and write the topic down on the whiteboard. It's just clearer for the audience, you as the judge and the team. Make sure you use the exact same wording. If the wording is something like cats are better than dogs, do not write a cat is better than a dog. You have to write cats are better than dogs exactly as it is. Any Oh, and once you finish the debate, you go to the judges room, you drop your ballot off in the specific pile marked for that round. For like high school, middle school, we'll organize it in a certain way for you, don't worry. Just make sure you put it in the right category, and then the tabulator will like take those results and like write something up. Yeah, okay, that's a lot of stuff. Please, any last questions that anyone has here, and inshallah we can finish by 11. No questions? Okay, cool. Osman, do you have any final thoughts you need to say? Anything like that?
No, Jazakallah khair, everyone, for sitting through this training. I know it's a lot of information,
Yeah.
but when you're there, you'll have your rubric, you have your fellow judges, and worst comes to worst, trust your instincts, inshallah. We're all there
Yeah.
for the benefit of the debaters, so just keep that in mind.
We hope that all the judges appear by like at the latest 9 o'clock. They should be there before 9 o'clock, so we can just do a quick run through because our current schedule is we're going to be starting the first debate at 9:15, and we obviously want you to be like well accustomed and like familiar. We don't want you to be rushed. So I would say honestly, please get there no later than 8:45. That'll give you enough time to go through all the materials. It'll give you enough time to acclimate yourself to the situation. So please arrive no later than 8:45, inshallah. Yeah, and that's it. I really appreciate you all for coming. Thank you so much. I think we'll end with Surah Al-Asr. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر سبحانك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. And thank you all very much for coming, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, inshallah.
Thank you, Omar. Thank you, Usman. Assalamu alaikum, everybody.
Thank you both. Assalamu alaikum. Oh, Brother Mustafiz, are you still there?
What time do you want me to come over tomorrow, by the way?
Let's
Just
see.
if
I don't know.
I-
I have to check to see how long the drive is.
I think it's an hour and a half. I'm not sure though.
It's an hour and a
It,
half.
it
Dang.
might be
Okay.
less. I don't know.
Then-
It's Dar al Taqwa?
Yeah. Dar al-Taqwa. It might be earlier in the morning, but this does mean that we're gonna have to leave pretty pretty early because we'll have to
I mean,
be there.
This is saying right now an hour. I mean, are we taking tolls or no tolls?
I'm cool with taking tolls. I'll do whatever I have to do if that's
Okay, it's saying an hour, then hour 3 minutes. So I
hour
think
and
that's
3 minutes.
probably,
Okay.
I think
We're
it's
gonna
probably for the best.
I will need to be there by like 8:15 just so I can see everything and figure everything out.
Okay,
Um,
I'll be at your place at 7:15.
cool. Yeah, sounds good. And Osman, I have to say, I think this was like an incredible training, honestly. I feel like we went through everything that we needed to. I think we're gonna make this one the uh what's it called? I think we'll make this like the permanent training one that we do because I feel like we went through everything that we had to.
What's the video?
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
congratulations.
Yeah, I'm famous. All right, Assalamu alaikum. I'll see you
All
tomorrow.
right, assalamu alaikum. See you tomorrow. Let's see. I'm just making sure that we're recording it. Brother Musfiz, are you there?
Yes.
Brother Musfiz, this was a really, really good training thing that we did. I don't know if I'm going to do a better one in the future, but can we save this one, put it up on YouTube, and just...
It is on the YouTube. You see the YouTube already. I did it.
Okay, great. And just make it public. Later on, we'll figure out how to like incorporate this into the training, but like we'll use this one, I think, for all the future ones, inshallah.
It is is public. You check it out.
Thank you so much. And then the other things, I just want to run through some stuff because I didn't get a chance to have that logistical meeting or anything. Um, let's see. First, brother,
Are you the host?
I think so, yeah. I was, but you're the host now.
I'm the host, right? Because I want to stop the recording.
I don't know how to stop the recording, but I
I
think you're
think
the
it has
host.
stopped, right?
I don't see the recording thing happening anymore.
Yeah. So if you go to the, let me check. Hold on. I'm on phone, so that is little difficult. But let me check. Bismillah. I'm checking that how far recording has been recorded. It's live.
Awesome. Let's see. I still think it might be broad. It says the content of this meeting is being sent to YouTube, so I might still be live streaming. I don't know.
That's why I'm trying to turn off.
Your brother Mustafi, just to ensure that, nothing that we say here gets put on the YouTube thing. Is it okay if we end this meeting and
Okay,
then Brother Mustafi, can we just end this meeting and then I'll call you on the phone? I can't hear you if you're saying something.